What is going on, Amazon sellers? Today I've got a very special guest. It is Finn Parker. He is the lead of what is it? Is it customer satisfaction or customer? What
Customer
is your official
success.
customer success? I like it.
Customer
So
success manager.
Finn handles all of the inbound inquiries that you guys may have when you are using Aura. That's at goaura.com, or there's also going to be like a link below that if you want to get a discount or maybe an extended trial that you can use out or use for yourself. But one of the questions that I know I get quite frequently is, what are the best practices? What are the strategies that I can use inside of my Aura repricer to make sure that everything is set up properly? And I always tell people, like, here's exactly what I do. However, I don't want to go sharing my screen and all that stuff inside of my Aura account. So Finn has graciously agreed to come on and share his account. And we're going to talk a couple of different strategies. We're going to talk about best practices and things like that. So, Finn, thanks so much for hanging out with me, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Excited
Yeah.
to get started and share some best practices and tips from for Aura and set of strategies.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's do. I guess what's one of the questions you get most often, or what's one of the strategies you see most frequently deployed that works well for people?
Yeah, so we're opinionated on the strategies that we recommend to people. I'm sure if some people have seen Dylan's webinars on creating strategies for Aura. So I'm here to walk through that more in depth. One that we frequently recommend to people is called the oscillation strategy. And the idea behind that is that, so the concept behind repricing, right, is that Amazon considers a series of factors for what seller on a listing on Amazon wins the buy box. Historically speaking, pricing is the number one weighted factor for Amazon to consider you to be competitive. And the lower the price, generally speaking, the more competitive you are to win the buy box. Now, the oscillation strategy prices beneath the current buy box offer. So Aura will target the current buy box winner on a listing, price below it, and then this all happens within the confines of your min-max price in Aura. So as you approach your minimum price, the oscillation feature that we recommend is that once you reach your minimum price, it cycles back up to your max price. And this has a couple of positive implications, which we'll get into when we dive into the strategies.
Awesome. That sounds great. You want to go ahead and share your screen and we'll dive in and take a look at these?
For sure. Yep.
Cool.
All right. So here in our demo account, I went ahead and created three strategies one, two, and three. I like to consider these to almost be like buckets that you can add listings to depending on the age of your inventory within them. So as you can see here, we have strategy one, which is the oscillation strategy. This is what I recommend people start with and see how well listings respond to this type of strategy. And if you decide that you'd rather be more aggressive or you want to take your listings and move them to a more aggressive type of strategy, after 30 days or so, you can move it to a more standard buy box targeting strategy, which removes the feature of it cycling up to your max price. I generally break these into 30-day chunks or 30-day buckets. So the final strategy is the most aggressive. It's a liquidation strategy. It's not necessarily meant to extract every penny of margin from your listings. Rather, it's meant to recapture the deployed capital that you have in the form of inventory. And so we can get into the individual parameters of each, but I figured it would probably add the most value if I went ahead and created the first strategy, the oscillation strategy, from scratch. And then there's actually a duplicate feature in Aura where you can take an existing strategy, duplicate it so it carries over all the same settings, and then you can make little adjustments and tweaks as needed to then turn them into either more aggressive or more advanced strategies depending on your preference. So what
Perfect.
I'll actually go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and delete these. So we can start with a clean slate. And then from there, I can walk through actually setting it up from scratch, showing you all of the features inside of it and what each setting specifically does.
That sounds
So,
perfect. And of course, when
apologies.
you're screen sharing, everything always loads a little bit slower. So don't feel bad about this.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. We'll do this one too. And I also want to just add as a note to anybody watching this too, that we take a lot of pride in our customer success here at Aura. And for anybody watching who's interested in having me run through in their specific accounts to help set these up, at the end of the call, I can give out my email. So anybody watching who's interested can email me directly, and then we can jump into a one-on-one Zoom onboarding call. And we can run through these in depth, and I can answer any questions you might have directly as well.
Perfect. I will have to say that is one thing that I've never heard a complaint about, is you guys are extremely helpful when it comes to customers, and I appreciate that.
Likewise. Yeah, no, we appreciate you too, Chris. And like I said, part of our role in success, it's not just support, it's not just sales, but we want to educate users, not only on the best practices of Aura, but also on selling as Amazon as a whole. There's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of points that can cause tripping hazards and pitfalls. And, having been experienced as a seller myself prior to this and having been involved in the ecosystem, actually, as a matter of fact, tomorrow, May 11th, we're recording this on the 10th, that is my 3-year anniversary with Aura. So I've been doing this now for 3 years. And it's kind of amazing the things that you learn and just from being involved in the ecosystem and being able to go back and forth with users. So I just want to say, thank you to everybody who's, helped make this, welcomes me into the community. And now I'm excited to give back in the form of teaching how to use strategies. So
awesome.
With that said, so here on the strategy page, we're going to start with a blank slate. So there's going to be no strategies here in the demo account. So to create your first strategy, you would come up here and click create. And Amazon, we currently are exclusive to Amazon. That's our focus for the time being. With the launch of Aura 1.0 imminent, in the immediate future, we do plan to expand to other marketplaces soon. But for the time being, we really want to hone in on Amazon and make sure that we're delivering the best value possible. So with that said, we'll choose Amazon. And here under the next page, a strategy type, we have a couple of different pre-configured strategies. Now, what these are like they say, pre-configured in the sense when you select one, it will have our recommended settings already pre-baked into the strategy for you. So you don't have to, it takes a lot of the guesswork out. And if you want a quick strategy to just start with and start deploying your inventory on, we have those available for you here. For the sake of our demo, I want to start with a custom strategy. So completely blank slate. So we can start from the very beginning and we can go layer by layer.
Perfect.
So the first thing it's going to bring you into is going to be the competitors tab. Now, a brief overview of the way that strategies work as a whole is that there's 3 main components to the strategy. There's competitors, there's pursuit, and there's maintenance. Minimax pricing is going to be the 4th tab on this configurator. I personally like to consider it to be 3+1 because while the minimax pricing is tied to your strategy, meaning that you can set different minimax parameters per strategy, and so when you change strategy, you can have different minimax ranges, it doesn't directly influence the performance of the strategy itself. Rather, it just defines the range where Aura, that strategy rather, is authorized to operate between. Mm-hmm. So as a result, competitors, that can be thought of as the who. So who it is Aura targets on a listing, and who it is that we reprice against specifically based on their price movements. Pursuit is going to be focused on how it reprices against that competitor. And then maintenance is going to be how it reprices while you're in the buy box. So pursuit is going to be how it reprices when you're not in the buy box. Maintenance is going to be how it reprices when you are in the buy box. So to start on competitors, the competition type, this is going to be one of the most defining settings of the whole strategy itself. So this is going to allow you to pick who specifically on the listing or reprices against based on their price movements. Now, there's a couple different options here. You can choose between the lowest overall, which is just the lowest price period on a listing, the lowest priced offer who's FBA, lowest price who's merchant fulfilled. We have the buy box winner, so no matter who it is on the buy box, you will target their price movements. And then we have 2-step sequential competition types, meaning that Aura will first prioritize targeting. So this one, for example, lowest FBA, then merchant fulfilled. Aura will first start by targeting the lowest FBA offer. And then if and when either you become the lowest FBA or there isn't any other lower FBA offers on the listing, it will then shift to targeting the lowest merchant fulfilled offer on the listing. I personally recommend that you target the buy box. The reason for this is that I think it's like 82 or 83% of sales on a listing go through the buy box on any given ASIN. You can think of it as a shortcut to picking the most competitive offer on the listing, at least in Amazon's eyes. And in terms of a repricer, that's the end game. Once you get in the buy box, from there, based on sales rank, of course, that's where the sales occur.
Absolutely.
So by targeting the buy box, who's the most competitive offer, and then competing with their pricing, that gives you the best odds of winning the buy box.
Nice. And now I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
When it is a merchant fulfilled seller, whether you're looking to match a merchant fulfilled seller or a merchant fulfilled seller's in the buy box, I would imagine that you guys take into account their shipping price as well as their actual sale price, correct?
Correct. So the way that Aura operates is we price based off of the landed price, which is going to be the item price plus any shipping that they might have added to that listing. It's called the landed price. You can think of it as a total amount that's charged to the customer.
Perfect.
Great. So with that said, like I said, the buy box, most competitive offer, that's going to be your shortcut to the most competitive seller on the listing, which could get you into the buy box. Now, I also want to clarify a few myths that the lowest priced offer is the buy box winner. This isn't always the case. And in fact, it's actually becoming less and less common that the lowest price is the buy box winner. And the reason for this, at least, from what I've observed, is that Amazon has started taking into consideration more than just pricing. There used to be a time where you could match the lowest priced offer on the listing and the buy box would rotate pretty evenly. That's not to say that isn't the case anymore, but Amazon is now looking at shipping times, so the delivery dates, so how quickly can you get to the customers. This is where having Prime shipping is really going to help you. It's going to take into account feedback ratings, so how they perceive the quality of your seller account. From there, it kind of tapers off. Amazon may look at the amount of stock you have, the age of your account, the health of your account, if you have any flagged IP complaints, authenticity complaints. These are all sort of factored in, but the graph of factors kind of tapers off after feedback, at least from what I've observed. So with that being said, the buy box is still the most competitive, and that's who we still recommend targeting, as opposed to the lowest blank. Because if you target the lowest overall offer on the listing, they're not necessarily going to be the buy box winner, and vice versa. The buy box winner isn't necessarily going to be the lowest offer on the listing. And you can see that sometimes if you head to a listing and there's the buy box winner, may actually be like the third or fourth offer from the bottom. But if you look at those competitors beneath that are priced beneath the buy box, they may have subpar feedback rating. They may be back ordered. Their account might be brand new. So a lot of the time, the buy box winner is not necessarily the lowest offer. And by targeting the buy box, you skip repricing against those lower offers that Amazon deems to be less competitive overall.
Okay.
So moving down here, the competition type, once you select the competition type, the strategy is going to be focused on the buy box. Now, this setting here, featured sellers only, this becomes redundant with the buy box because this will filter out anybody who's ineligible for the buy box. This setting would be useful for if you're targeting the lowest overall, but if you're targeting the buy box, then that setting becomes redundant. In order to win the buy box, you have to be eligible for it. So that setting becomes less relevant. Everything else underneath here is exclusionary based. So you can decide to weed out and filter out anybody who may not be, may not have a strong feedback rating or who may be considered back ordered. My general philosophy on this is that I usually say to disable these, at least, within your comfort level, if you're targeting the buy box. The reason for that is that because Amazon considers these factors when determining who is going to win the buy box, they're going to do a lot of the vetting for you on these factors. These factors, or these settings here, these exclusionary rules, those would add a bit more value if you were targeting, again, like the lowest overall on the listing, because that's where it may be important to filter out anybody who may be back ordered or has a subpar feedback rating. But if you're targeting the buy box, Amazon's going to do a lot of that vetting for you. So you probably don't need to be excluding them on your own. The other reason for this is that it's maybe a bit of an edge case, but if you're on a listing and maybe there's one or two other offers on the listing that happen to have inventory inbound, so they're coming back as back ordered. If you have this setting enabled while you're targeting the buy box and they're in the buy box, or won't even try to compete against them. It'll exclude them. So by configuring it this way, you're sticking to the buy box winner, but you're allowing anybody who's in the buy box, who Amazon puts in the buy box, to be an eligible competitor.
Okay.
Now, for those who sell used items, we do have a setting here that will allow you to filter out whether you compete also against used offers, but those only in the same or better condition. This is especially useful for booksellers, for example. If you have a new item, you don't necessarily want to be competing against acceptable priced item. So this would be relevant to those who sell used items. But for those who sell new items, you can essentially disregard that setting.
Now, I do have a question for those who use or who sell used items,
Sure.
especially if it's media or books or things like that. There is often a used buy box.
Yes.
If we're using the only buy box as our competition type, but the used items in our who we'll compete against, are we going to be competing against those people who are in the used buy box in the same or better condition?
You will, yes. So
Okay.
the way that Aura handles new versus used items is if you have a new offer, you will only compete against other new offers in the new buy box. If you have a used SKU in Aura, it will only compete against other used items. This is where you can filter the condition, but if a used buy box exists on a listing and you have a used item that's assigned to the buy box via the competition type, you will automatically be competing against the used buy box if one exists.
Fantastic.
Great. So now I can move to the next setting, now that the who of the strategy is defined. So now we get to the pursuit section. This is really the meat and bones of Aura. This is where you can determine how Aura reprices against the buy box. And so I want to start off with these top 3 settings here. These are all under the same umbrella. But first I want to preface, whenever you see the word competition, just replace it in your mind with the word buy box, because that's the way Aura is going to operate. The competition that's referenced here is going to follow your competition type under the competitors tab. Excuse me. So whenever you read how to price against the competition, or when the competition is below or at your min price, you can just sub out that for the word buy box. So how to price against the buy box. When the buy box is below or at your min price, what do you do? So to start off, these top 3 settings here, in its current state, with price differently against Prime sellers and price differently against Amazon disabled, this top setting will be how Aura reprices against the buy box, no matter who's in it. So if it's a FBA offer in the buy box, if it's Amazon in the buy box, if it's merchant fulfilled offer in the buy box, you're going to reprice beneath them by a penny. Now, if you enable these settings here, these will allow you to reprice differently against those offers depending on who is in the buy box at a given time. So if I were to go ahead and change the setting to price below by a penny, and then adjust this top setting to say match price, what this will do is that when the buy box winner has a Prime badge next to it, meaning they're an FBA offer in the buy box, Aura will reprice beneath them by a penny. If the offer in the buy box does not have Prime shipping, or typically they're merchant fulfilled, Aura will just match their price. So depending on who is in the buy box on any given listing, when the strategy is assigned to that, this will reprice differently based on what offer type is winning the buy box. So this allows you to have a little bit more granular control over how Aura handles different offer types. And this is especially useful if, for example, and this is what I recommend too, is that generally speaking, if you have an FBA offer with Prime shipping, and your inventory is checked in and it's available, it's fulfillable, you have some of the best shipping times available on Amazon. Prime shipping often comes with 2-day shipping, I think it is now. So as a result, that factor of shipping times is going to help you significantly. Prime offers are historically inherently more competitive for the buy box. So in a case like this, where if you have a Prime offer and you're competing against someone who doesn't have Prime offer, who's in the buy box, you probably don't need to be as aggressive against them, because your Prime shipping, your status of having Prime shipping, is already going to give you a little bit of an edge. It's going to help you get rotated into the buy box. If, for example, the buy box winner is FBA and you also sell as FBA, then that variable of shipping times is held equal because you both have Prime shipping. So as a result, if neither of you then have an advantage, you may need to be a little bit more competitive on the pricing side to offset the fact that you no longer have that advantage that you otherwise would against a merchant fulfilled offer. So generally speaking, I recommend competing against merchant fulfilled offers not too aggressively. You could probably match their price and win the buy box, or at least get some buy box share if you're FBA. And versus against Prime, where I do recommend pricing beneath FBA offers who are in the buy box, because you no longer have that advantage of having Prime.
Perfect.
And then moving down, you can also dictate how Aura reprices against Amazon if they are in the buy box. This also assumes that you're not excluding them from the setting on the previous screen. But if you do choose to sell on listings where Amazon is on the listing and you choose to compete against them, you can have Aura repriced differently, whether it's Amazon in the buy box as well. I frequently get asked, what is like the silver bullet amount that you need to reprice beneath Amazon to win the buy box buy? And the truth is that it's truly a shot in the dark. I've seen listings out there where you can match Amazon on the listing and you'll get buy box share. I've also seen listings where, a seller is priced a full $1 or $2 beneath Amazon and they won't budge. I personally think it has to do with like their stock at a fulfillment center. If they have boatloads of stock and they want to, sell through it and clear space, they may anchor themselves to the buy box just to pick up their sales velocities. Again, this is just a theory, but because it's so inconsistent and there's no real rhyme or reason to how you reprice against Amazon, I recommend testing it personally with different amounts and consulting Keepa. Keepa will show you, how willing Amazon is to share the buy box and, what you can realistically expect when competing against them.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah. So I typically don't like to compete against Amazon. I know some people are like, no, I compete against Amazon all the time.
Yeah.
And it can be tricky. There are things like regional buy boxes where maybe Amazon's, inventory is over on the West Coast and yours is on the East Coast, and maybe you get more of a share of it, but it's not showing up in Keepa. And then there are other times where there's a solid buy box price that's well below Amazon where they're always sharing. So it is tricky.
Yeah, it's definitely the edge case of sellers. And for that reason, like I said, if you choose to compete on against Amazon on listings where they sell on, you can have Aura reprice against them differently. I typically say allow Aura to reprice against them as if they're FBA. Because Amazon has Prime shipping on their own products, those listings that Amazon's in the buy box on, those will get filtered into this setting here. So moving down, the next setting is when the buy box is suppressed. Now, if you are not targeting the buy box within a strategy, if your competition type is, say, lowest FBA, the wording on this setting will change. It will, because the functionality will change. Instead, it will read, when there is no competition. The reason why it changes to when the buy box is suppressed is because this setting will trigger when Aura cannot find the competitor you're targeting. So if you're targeting the buy box and it's suppressed, there is no buy box. So technically speaking, that's Aura's way of saying that there's no competition on the listing. To give an overarching view of what a suppressed buy box is, you can think of it as it's Amazon basically punishing you for everybody on the listing for having their offers priced too high for what they consider to be acceptable. Amazon's literally saying you're all too greedy and we're going to take away the buy box from you until one of you lowers your price to what they consider to be an acceptable threshold. How they calculate this, nobody really knows, but they likely take into consideration other marketplaces, maybe similar ASINs. But regardless, for as long as those offers are priced higher than what they consider to be acceptable, they'll still let you buy it, but they won't feature you in a buy box. So that's typically what it means when a buy box is suppressed. And those are indicated in Aura by the buy box status having a yellow exclamation mark, and you hover over it instead of showing whether you're in the buy box or another competitor's seller ID. Instead, it's just going to say this buy box is suppressed. Now, the way that we recommend handling this
before we get there, I would just want to clarify, just in case people aren't aware, or there's a lot of times people are like, oh, well, can I even sell on suppressed buy boxes? So here's something you should know. One, Amazon does have bots that go out and scrape other marketplaces, the Targets, the Walmarts, the Kohl's of the world, to compare prices, because Amazon does want to be, a low or the lowest price.
Right.
Now, the other question is should I even sell on a buy box when it's suppressed, or should I sell on a product listing when it's suppressed? And the answer is it's up to you, but a suppressed buy box does not mean that the sales stop. Oftentimes, if there is a buy box and then it becomes suppressed, you will see the velocity of a particular product slow down, but that does not mean that it will not sell. And sometimes, when the buy box is suppressed, it's because the velocity of that ASIN has gotten so high and the competition has come down on that listing where the price naturally goes up, just following the rule of supply and demand. And so sometimes it won't even slow down the velocity. It just causes some friction for the buyer to have to go through another step. Right. So, yeah, there's a lot to know about a suppressed buy box, but don't let them scare you off.
That's a great point. Right. Yeah. A lot of people avoid suppressed buy boxes like the plague. And in a lot of cases, there's no real reason to. I've personally purchased items on Amazon as a shopper from suppressed buy boxes because I know that it's just Amazon being finicky with what they consider to be an acceptable price.
Absolutely.
So with that said, the way that we recommend handling these is this current configuration here, where it reads customized price set to current price minus 2 cents. So in its current form, I may be able to explain it a little bit better than what it shows, but basically what happens is that if you're on a listing and the buy box becomes suppressed, Aura will take the current price you left off at and it'll lower it by 2 cents. What it does then, and the way that Aura handles every price change, is that we then send the price change off to Amazon, and then anytime you or anybody else on the listing updates their price, anybody on the listing in the lowest 20 offers, we receive a feed, which is through their API, which is effectively a snapshot of seller IDs and prices, and we can see the buy box status, merchant fulfilled FBA. It's a snapshot of what the competitor landscape looks like. The way that Aura recognizes that a buy box is suppressed is on this list of sellers, there's no buy box winner. Nobody's coded as a buy box winner. So as a result, when there's no buy box winner on that feed, we will lower your price by 2 cents, send it off to Amazon, wait for a price change to come back with your seller ID showing your new price. That's how we confirm the price change has gone through and been processed, that loop. And if there's still no buy box winner, if there's still no offer being coded as a buy box winner, we'll do it again. We'll rinse and repeat. So that will then become the current price, and we'll lower it by 2 cents again. Again, fire off the price change, wait for the feed to come back confirming your price change. It will continue to do this in a loop for as long as there's no buy box on the offer, for as long as it cannot find a buy box on that feed. Now, the idea behind this is that this will effectively make Aura gradually lower your price while the buy box is suppressed for as long as it cannot find the buy box. And what this does is this ends up testing different price points as you lower your price from the point you left off at down to your minimum price. It'll begin testing the price points 2 cents apart at a time, looking for the point where Amazon will give back the buy box. Now, the primary issue is that we're not told what point Amazon will give the buy box back at. If we were, we could, in theory, we could have a button that says, go to this price and win the buy box, but that'd be too nice. So instead, what we have to do is we have to gradually lower the price a few cents at a time, looking for the buy box price. And once you do this, one of two things will happen. You'll either reach the point where Amazon will give back the buy box, you'll become the hero of the listing, and you'll win it, or you reach your minimum price, at which point you can either stay there, or depending on your settings below, you can have it cycle back up to your max price following the oscillation function.
Now, I have to ask here, if this happens and the buy box becomes suppressed and you're using this customized price and you're kind of inching down to see if you can get that buy box back, sure. Is your minimum price still used where you will not price below your minimum?
Yes. So your min-max prices in Aura, those are hard boundaries. Aura is only authorized to move your price between your min price and your max price. And so that includes when the buy box is suppressed. That will include, when you're lowering your price to compete. Whenever it reaches your minimum price, again, based on your setting down here, which we'll get to in a second, that will determine whether you stay there or you bounce off of it to go back up to your max. But under no scenario will Aura break that min price and go down. That is the range where you are authorizing Aura to bring your price between.
Perfect.
So now we move into these bottom three settings. When the buy box, again, competition equals buy box here, is below or at your min price, what do? There's a couple different options here. I usually recommend staying at your minimum price here. The reason for this is, again, like we said, if the buy box is below or at your min price and you would otherwise be at your min price trying to compete, your min price is going to be the closest you can get. It's not going to be able to break through your min price to still get to the buy box underneath your min price. Instead, it's going to stop there because that's going to be the closest it can get. So in these cases, I recommend staying at your min price for both of these settings. The other options are you can ignore the competition, which means that you will disregard that offer that's below you. Or you can have it set to do not reprice, which will effectively just halt repricing for as long as the buy box is either below or at your min price, respectively. Now, for the oscillation function, that's this guy down here, this bottom setting. When your price reaches your min price, what do? In a standard buy box targeting strategy, which is typically what I recommend for strategy number 2, so the next bucket of strategies, I usually say stay at your min price there. Same with liquidation strategy, is that the lower you can bring your price, especially when your price would otherwise be at your min price, that's generally the more competitive approach. However, for an oscillation strategy, in order for that to function, you will need to go up to your max price when you reach your min price. Now, this has a couple of implications, and there's 2 primary key results that you are aiming for by bringing your price up to your max price. The first is that if you are competing with a competitor, right, and you're both lowering your price, and eventually you reach your minimum price and you can't go below it, by raising your price up to your max price, this could incentivize the other offer to recognize that there's a gap between you, especially if they're using Aura, in which case the maintenance section can do this for you automatically, which I'll get to. But you can then close the gap between where you win the buy box at and the next lowest eligible offer for the buy box. So if it's you and another competitor and you're lowering your price and you reach your min price, by bringing your price up to your max price, you can incentivize them to then realize that there's money on the table between your price and their price, and they could then raise their price up and restore margin on the listing for yourself, for them, and for everybody. Now, the other implication that could happen here is that if you are, again, lowering your price and you go up to your max price, let's say this guy down here in the buy box, maybe they have limited stock. You could effectively allow them to have the buy box and then sell out, and then all of a sudden the buy box may either rotate back up to you or another offer within your min-max range where you can then begin competing again. So that's the concept behind the oscillation strategy. Another key thing I'll add is that I highly recommend that you test this. The reason for this is that it sounds great on paper. It sounds great when I explain it. But the truth is that not every offer out there is going to respond well or going to respond the way you want it to this. There could be scenarios where as you lower your price, that competitor stays low, and maybe it's a replen for them, maybe it's wholesale, who knows, and they never go out of stock and they never raise it back up. That would be a case where it may make sense to switch your strategy here, which we're building, the oscillation strategy, to a more competitive one that instead keeps you at your minimum price. So, like I said, it sounds great, but in reality, you're just going to have to see how the listings respond, how the competitors respond to this, and then adjust your strategy accordingly.
Perfect. And so I think this is a good time to point out that while Aura and repricers in general are meant to save us time so that we don't have to reprice manually, every 15 minutes or things like that, and we can have things repriced, as fast as Amazon will allow. It does not mean that we can only play. We can't just be. We can't just let these sit. We do need to come in and we need to look at our listings on a fairly regular basis, and maybe certain listings need to be updated to a different kind of strategy.
Exactly, right. Every single listing on Amazon is different. The competitors on every single listing are different. In each listing, and their competitors on it are going to respond differently. It's really hard to recommend a strategy, a cookie cutter, that it's one size fits all. There's so many different variables depending on the competition, the listing, the sales rank. There's so many moving pieces here that different listings may require different strategies with different levels of aggression. Mm-hmm. So moving down, the final piece on this page is use max price when out of stock. This setting is especially valuable for those who, maybe it's a replen, but there may be lead times with your suppliers, so you go in and out of stock frequently. But the concept behind this is that as you deplete your stock and you go out of stock, what Aura can do is it can then raise your price up to your max. It can reset it while you go out of stock, before you replenish your inventory. Now, the idea behind this, it's very similar to the oscillation function, where if your price gets lowered, towards your minimum price as you are selling through it, when you go out of stock before you come back into stock, you could effectively, again, reset your pricing up high. So when you do come back into stock, you kind of begin near the top of your Minimax range as opposed to the bottom. This setting is, like I said, it's especially valuable for sellers who deal with replens and may not be in stock 100% of the time. For sellers who sell, who do arbitrage, who may, sell a handful of units and then never plan on replenishing the listing, it may not add that much value for them. Same with wholesale or accounts where, it's consistently in stock. This setting is specifically useful for those who go in and out of stock frequently, who want to reset their prices back up to their max price between times when their inventory is in stock.
Perfect. And let me ask this, just because I've never paid attention enough, but does Aura consider your inventory to be in stock, once it's inbound? So if you're shipping it into Amazon, and Amazon might say that it's active, or does Aura consider your inventory to be in stock once you're eligible to actually be in a buy box?
Good question. So there's in Aura, if you hover over an FBA listing inventory, there's going to be 3 different categories of stock for an active listing. There's going to be available, inbound, and then transfer. So inbound is the first stage when you're sending your inventory to Amazon, but it hasn't reached them yet. Your listing will still be considered active in Aura, but Aura won't be able to reprice until at least 1 unit is checked in and marked as available. That means it's reached a fulfillment center, it's been marked in as received, and the item is no longer back ordered / inbound. Same with FC transfer. It's if your listing is inbound and it reaches Amazon and then they shuffle around your inventory between their fulfillment centers, it's still technically not available yet because it hasn't reached its final internal destination. But Aura will begin repricing once at least 1 unit of that SKU is checked in and marked as available.
Perfect.
So I'm going to move on to the next setting here, which is the maintenance section. So this is where Aura looks when you're winning the buy box. And its functionality differs a little bit in the sense that this will help you recover any sort of margin that may be left on the table, similar to what we discussed with the oscillation strategy. So here, our default setting and my recommended setting is to stick to raise price. You have a couple different options here, and you can think of it as you're in the buy box. So in this setting will only trigger when you're in the buy box. This will allow you to move dynamically when you're in the buy box relative to other offers. So when it's set to raise price, you will then raise your price from where you are within the amount here that's listed in Aura, within the next lowest offer on the listing, next lowest eligible offer for the buy box. So the value that you see here in Aura, this is going to be the buffer. So you're going to be allowing Aura to go within this amount of the next lowest offer, closing that gap. Other settings could be to lower your price. So same idea. If your price is here and there's an offer that comes in below you, you could then lower your price to be within this amount underneath that offer still. Lower and raise price will essentially do both, but in this order. So let's pretend your offer is at $25 and there's another offer comes in at $24 and then there's another offer above you at $26. So 24, 25, 26, you're in the buy box. When it's set to lower and raise price, your price will first move down to $23.99 to try and be within a penny underneath the offer that's below you. And for example, if that offer below you didn't exist and there was just an offer above you at 26, it would first look down and check to see if there's offers beneath you. And if not, then it would raise your price to close the gap. So this setting will allow you to dynamically move your price while in the buy box to ensure you stay competitive while in the buy box, while at the same time increasing your margin all while you're in the buy box. It's really personal preference how this is handled. I personally recommend either doing lower and raise price or simply raise price here. The reason for this, and especially with an early strategy, and when I say early, I mean the strategy that you would assign to listings initially, I would almost advocate for setting this to raise price on listings that are young, with their inventory age is maybe under 30 days, which is what I recommend the oscillation strategy for. Because in that phase, in the first 30 days of having your inventory in stock, you want to be increasing your margin as much as you can. Once you get into a liquidation strategy or a more aggressive strategy, that's where it might make sense to sacrifice a little bit of your margin to be able to stay in the buy box and sell it faster. So for this strategy, I'll leave it as raise price, because this way, when you're in the buy box, Aura will only be trying to increase your margin on the listing. And it will do so by staying within this amount of the next lowest offer. So again, my example, if your price is $25, there's another eligible offer above you, 26, this will raise your price automatically for you to $25.99. If you set this to 5 cents, that's the buffer. It'll raise your price to $25.95. If you set to 0, then there'll be no buffer and it'll just match the price. You can also set this based on percentage as well. I typically recommend using like fixed dollar amounts in Aura because it's going to be easy to follow in the logs and easy to troubleshoot if you want to dig deeper. I usually say for this setting, use anywhere between 1 and 2 or 3 cents, maybe 2, because the idea behind this is that you want to raise your price to increase your margin, but you don't want to raise your price so high that you risk the buy box rotating away from you and going to the other offer. So it's kind of a risk reward thing in the sense where the smaller the number, the higher you can raise your price and thus increase your margin. But you also risk getting that much closer to the competitor versus a bigger number would be a bigger buffer and it'll keep you lower. Ultimately, it'll keep your price lower, but you also don't have as much risk in the buy box jumping from your offer to the next lowest offer.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I like that.
Cool. So I'm going to jump to min-max pricing now, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So we have a couple different options here. There's 4 options here. Manual means that the min-max pricing fields on your SKUs on the listings tab will just be open. You're free to just go in and punch them in. You have full control over it. You can set them to whatever you'd like. This is fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. In fact, it's actually probably more useful on accounts where there's fewer SKUs than a lot of SKUs. Once you get into accounts with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of SKUs, that's where automating your min-max pricing would probably increase efficiency and reclaim some time. So there's 3 different options here for how Aura can automatically set your min-max prices. We have ROI, profit margin, and fixed profit. I recommend ROI. And the majority of users in Aura use ROI when they do have Aura calculate their min-max pricing for you. So ROI stands for return on investment. And in Amazon land, you can consider the word investment to be synonymous with your cost, because on each listing, there's going to be a cost field. That is going to be how much you paid for the item, or really how much you invested in one unit of that product. So setting your min-max range, this is the hardest part to advise on because it really depends on your preferences and your tolerance and your goals for your business. I typically see anywhere between maybe 20 and 40% for a minimum. I'd say 35%. That's probably like the median of what I see. But in reality, it's totally up to the user. There's no right answer here. There's no wrong answer here. But maybe just for the sake of this demonstration with the strategy, I'll enter, let's use 30% here to keep it clean. Mm-hmm. Maximum ROI, again, Aura only requires a minimum price to reprice. So you don't need to set a maximum price if you don't want to. I recommend setting them manually, which you can do if you only set the minimum price here. If you leave the maximum price field blank here in the strategy settings, it will also leave the fields blank for your max prices on the listing itself. This is probably more useful for setting your min-max prices, for the reason being that your minimum price is there to protect your profit. It's there to ensure that you never sell underneath that amount and that you stay profitable. Your max price, on the other hand, doesn't really have anything to do with your cost. In fact, it actually has more to do with the listing itself. You could think, what is the most somebody would realistically pay for whatever this item is? And a good indicator of finding out what people would pay would be the buy box price. The buy box price is the market price today. And so if you set your max prices manually, I usually recommend taking a look at the buy box price and maybe, 20, 30, 40% above that, depending on the item, of course. But, that's probably around where people would tap out in terms of paying for their product. So as a best practice, that's what I recommend, setting your min prices automatically based on the return on your cost, and your max price, or setting your min price automatically, apologies, and your max price manually based on the buy box price. Now,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, I agree there, and I just want to offer the caveat that if you do this, if you leave that maximum ROI blank, make sure that you're setting that max price, because if you don't, yeah, you could end up having some issues where Amazon strands your inventory due to a high pricing error and things like that.
Exactly.
And while it's easy to fix, it can be
It's
a
inconvenient,
headache, you know.
right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'll add too is that when you set your min and max prices automatically based off of what Aura suggests, you can always go in and manually override either your min or your max price that Aura suggests. You always have full control over it, and whatever value you manually enter for your min and max price, Aura will honor that price. The other thing I want to quickly add is to better explain ROI to those who may not know exactly what it means, is that, again, the return on your investment. So let's say you buy an item, it's $20 per unit. Your investment in that unit is $20. That's how much you paid for one unit. The return on your investment is how much you want to earn in profit for every $20 that you invest in a unit of that inventory. So if you want to earn 20% return on investment and you have a $20 item, that's effectively saying for every $20 that you spend on a unit, when it sells, you want to earn 20% of that, which, if my math is correct, is $4.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that Aura will calculate your min and max pricing is it's comprised of three different elements. It's going to be the cost that you entered in Aura, so the amount that you claim you paid. It's going to add the whatever value you have set for your return for the min price, the ROI. So it'd be 100% of the min price, or 100% of the cost, plus 30% of the cost as your cut. So effectively, it's 130% of your cost that you're selling it for. And then Aura will do some reverse math, and it'll calculate the fees at that price point in that category to reimburse you for the fees that are inevitably going to come out of that sale. So at the end of the day, when you look at your min price breakdown, it's going to be the price that you paid, the cost that you paid for the item, the percentage of the cost that you want as your cut, and then the fees in that category for that price point. The sum of those is what the item is going to have to sell for, so that when it sells, you're reimbursed for the cost, the fees, and then you walk away with 30% more of your costs than you had before.
Perfect. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. The only thing that's not necessarily taken into account there is going to be, of course, our inbound shipping, which, because that's a variable rate that we can't figure out until we hit that ship button.
Exactly.
And then two, it's going to be any prep fees if you use a third-party prep center or something like that.
Right.
Now, here's my question. Do you suggest that, let's say that someone buys something for $20 and their prep costs are $1.50? Sure. Should they make their buy cost $21.50 to make up for that bike or that prep cost? And then for inbound shipping fees, should they add in either a set cost per unit, or maybe they add in 50 cents per pound and add that kind of thing into their actual costs like you would in a rev seller?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my answer to this is, to answer your questions, yes, and sometimes.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is that it really, again, it's really personal preference what it boils down to. I see some sellers entering purely the COGS, so purely your item cost on that listing, and then everything else is factored externally. I recommend including, my philosophy is that you should add every cent that you spend between procuring the item from your supplier and the time it reaches your customer's doorstep. So that would include prep cost. That may include inbound shipping if you choose to calculate it that way. Again, it's going to be tough to calculate inbound shipping because you're going to have to divide the cost by the number of units to kind of sprinkle that across accordingly. I typically almost recommend adding items to your cost field, adding expenses to your cost field that are clean cut, that are per unit specific. So that would include, taxes if you're not tax exempt, a prep cost if you use a prep center, materials if you prep yourself. What I wouldn't recommend are like operational overheads, such as the cost of Aura or any other tools like, again, Jungle Scout, Rev Seller, Smart Scout, any of them. I usually recommend keeping it unit specific And I would include any cost that you want Aura to account for when it calculates not only your min price with your ROI, but also your profit metrics, because Aura will take your cost into account when calculating your profit metrics. So the more granular you can get with it and the more expenses you can add to it, generally the better. I'd rather have more expenses accounted for and recouped than less.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Two more things on the minimax pricing, and then we can jump to the next strategy. The two other methods are profit margin, which uses a similar system to taking a percentage of your cost. It just takes a percentage of the revenue, the sale price, or fixed profit. Fixed profit is especially useful for low cost listings. And when I say, I mean ultra low cost. So you could think, $5 or $10 or less. And the reason for this is that if you use ROI on $1 on an item that costs $1, you're taking 30% of $1 as your cut, which is 30 cents, which is negligible. So as a result, instead of taking a percentage of an ultra low cost on a listing, you could use a fixed profit for low cost listings, and that would just allow you to add, you could say, I just want to make $3 period, no matter the cost. And instead of taking a percentage of your cost and adding that to the min price, or we'll just take your cost, the fees, and then a straight $3. It won't take a percentage of anything. And that's especially useful for low cost listings where a percentage of a low cost would be an even lower profit.
Okay, perfect. And now let me ask this question.
Sure.
If I were going to use a fixed profit, especially on a lower dollar item, of course, we're going to talk a lot about like the small and light products that people may want to sell. Yep. If we were to do that, does Aura take into account the lower fees that Amazon charges when it's enrolled in small and light, or is that even possible based on the way that Amazon reports that information to you guys?
So not currently. So this iteration of Aura that we're in right now will not recognize small and light. And that is a bit of a limitation that we've gotten a lot of feedback on. And in our next iteration of Aura, which we are releasing within the next 2 months, which will be rolling out Aura 1.0 to beta and waitlisted users, there will be dedicated support for small and light. In the current iteration, however, we do have a couple manual workarounds for this, which I personally recommend including manually setting your minimax prices. So I believe that the highest price you can price a small and light item is $12. Your maximum price should be $11.99. The reason for that is, and we can get into this too, is that the way that the current Aura is built on this current architecture is that, do you remember those feeds that I was describing that come back to us when you change your price on a suppressed listing?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime anybody on the listing changes their price, we receive an updated feed. The issue comes on low activity listings with high sales ranks that may not have price changes for a while. So there could be listings that, sellers typically sit and don't really change their price for, it could be days on end, frankly. And so because we require these feeds in order for Aura to trigger a price change or update a setting, if you were to change, a min price, a max price, a strategy setting, those will be reflected on the next price change. If those price changes don't come because nobody changes their price, we will artificially force one at the 3-hour mark after the last one. So what I mean by that is that Aura will trigger your price up by a penny and then immediately back down, which will force Aura or Amazon to send us an updated feed with, again, your seller ID change showing the change price. And that is our cue to either update the listing for any new parameters or min-max values that you may have changed in that time. Now, when it comes to small and light pricing, because they cap you at $12, you just want to leave 1 cent of headroom for that to occur automatically. So for that reason, if you have a hard max price that you don't want Aura to reprice over, I recommend just setting it 1 penny beneath to allow a little bit of headroom for that trigger, that automated triggering system to take place.
Awesome. That's really great to know.
In the new Aura, which I'll add, we're actually going to bypass this completely. There'll be no triggering system, which we're very excited for. And those feeds that I keep referencing, in the new iteration of Aura 1.0, we're actually going to just retain those. So anytime you make any adjustments to your min or max pricing or the strategy, it'll just replay the feed in real time and update your listing immediately. That's another huge benefit of our new iteration of Aura, is that you're going to have instantaneous updates to any strategy or a parameter that you change on the listing. You won't have to wait for this trigger or a price change for it to reflect, because we're going to store those feeds so we can instantly reference them and then update your listing back in real time to your latest settings.
Fantastic.
Cool. So I'm going to hit save on this. I'm going to click review. And then here I'll call this strategy 1. I'll call it oscillation. And then again, I like to break these into buckets. So, generally speaking, new listings can come in on this and you can assign it to the strategy if it's, say, under 30 days old. So I'll do 0 to 30 days and hit save. I'll create. And there you go. Now, for the other 2 strategies, because we ran through this one in such depth, there's actually an added benefit in Aura where you don't have to go through the process of recreating every single setting. In fact, there's a shortcut. So if you click Actions over here, there's a duplicate button, which will take your exact settings and literally just make a carbon copy of it. And then you can go in and make any tweaks or adjustments that you want that may be beneficial for a more aggressive strategy for, say, 31 to 60 days. So let's do that here. So we can click Duplicate. It's going to say this will duplicate the strategy in Aura. No listings will be assigned to it, which is what we want. So let's pretend we had 100 listings assigned to this strategy existing. If we duplicate it, it'll create a new copy, but it won't assign any listings to the strategy yet. It'll leave that for you to do. Mm-hmm. So here we can take away the word copy. It's going to put that there automatically. We can call this strategy 2. We can change the date range from, let's say 31 to 60 days. And then I usually like to make a few adjustments that take this out of the oscillating function. And this can be a more traditional buy box targeting strategy. So I'm going to click save. And a couple adjustments I would make. So again, like I said, I recommend having a couple different strategies that you put listings into. You can think of them as buckets, depending on the age of the listing. So as you get from 0 to 30 days into the 2-month range, so 31 to 60 days, that may be where you should consider dialing things up a bit. If inventory hasn't been moving as fast as you wanted it to, and you want to, or if you have listings where you just want to start more aggressively, this would be an appropriate strategy for that. So this page here, the competitors, this can stay the same. We still recommend targeting the buy box. However, under pursuit, because we are dialing things up a little bit, this is where I recommend changing the top setting, how to price against the buy box. Again, because we have this enabled, this is going to be exclusive to merchant fulfilled offers up here. I would change this to price below by a penny, and then you could consider pricing beneath other FBA offers instead of 1 penny, maybe by 2. Again, this is for inventory that's a little more stubborn. Maybe the listing's not selling as fast. Maybe the other competitors are really fierce and you're not getting the buy box share you want. So by dialing this up a bit, you're only increasing your odds of having a much more competitive price against the current buy box winner. As we scroll down, everything else can stay the same except this bottom setting here, when your price reaches your min price. So for the oscillation strategy, using max price makes sense for that. You can test it, you can see which listings respond well to it, you can keep those listings on it. But for this setting here, in order to have Aura stay at your min price when the buy box or when your price would otherwise be moved to your max price, we're going to have a stay at your min price instead. So we can hit save there. Next up is maintenance. I still recommend keeping this generally the same. You're still probably going to want to increase your margin when you're on the listing. And the other part that I forgot to add on the last strategy is that if you were to lose the buy box from Aura raising your price up too high, the Aura will automatically revert back to your pursuit settings to resume competing as it had been before to try and win you that buy box back. The other thing I want to add on the maintenance section is that Aura will only raise your price to within 2 cents of the next lowest offer if it isn't already. So if you win the buy box and you're neck and neck with the other seller, and maybe your price is either matching them or you're a penny below them from the previous screen, Aura is already within the 2 cents, so it won't move you up anymore. You're already within that amount, so it can only raise your price to within 2 pennies if you're more than 2 cents away from them already.
Okay.
And then the minimax pricing, again, back to here, ROI. This is a return on the cost that you want. And generally, again, for the sake of this demo, I would say as you increase your aggressiveness with the strategy, perhaps consider accepting a lower ROI. Because again, at the end of the day, what the minimum ROI is being calculated, it's the minimum price, which is the lowest you would minimally accept a sale at. It doesn't mean you're going to always get sales at 20%. It just means that that's going to be the lowest Aura can go. So by lowering your ROI value from 30 to 20%, you're giving yourself more headroom to be able to compete with lower price sellers.
I do have to ask because I'm curious.
Sure.
Let's just say that outside of maybe not my 31 to 60 day range, but maybe my 60 to 90 day range, or even 90 to 120 day range, can I set a negative ROI if I want to?
So we don't allow you to set a negative ROI here. The reason for that is it's mostly a safety feature. We allow you to set 0, which is break even, because again, 0 doesn't mean you're not going to lose money necessarily. It means that when it calculates your desired profit, it's going to calculate in your cost and the fees, but it's not going to add any value that you want to walk away with. So Aura doesn't currently let you set a negative ROI. However, if you do want to sell at a loss, you can do so by manually overriding your minimum price, in which case you can enter any value you'd like. But as a safety feature, we don't currently allow you to set a negative ROI. Bad things could happen if you inadvertently set, negative 30 instead of 30.
Absolutely, yeah, and have that go across 100 SKUs, and you'd be rather upset.
Right. So, like I said, with the second strategy, we can put 20. I'm going to hit save, and now we'll go back to the strategy. So now we have strategy 1, oscillation for 0 to 30 day inventory. Strategy 2, buy box targeting for 31 to 60 day inventory. And then finally, the final strategy I recommend is a liquidation strategy. This is going to be the most aggressive out of all the strategies. And it's also going to have the lowest ROI setting, because you're going to want to give yourself headroom to compete with the lower priced offers should they be priced that low. So again, we'll go in here, click duplicate, hit that, remove copy. We can just change this number here to maybe 60 days plus, and then sub buy box targeting, liquidation, strategy 3. So the changes I would say to make to here, again, I still recommend targeting the buy box. That's still going to be your best odds of getting in the buy box, which is really the supercharger that's going to be put on your sales. So for the most part, the competitor's tab can stay effectively the same. Under pursuit, this is where, again, personal preference kind of comes in at this point, because everybody has different philosophies on how they should be repricing against the buy box. Some feel very strongly that you should always match the buy box. You should never reprice below it. But the truth is, if you're in a liquidation strategy and your goal is just to sell, do a fire sale, sell as fast as you can, the lower you position yourself below the buy box, which is already the most competitive offer on the listing, the best odds you'll have of winning the buy box, which is effectively what you want when you want to liquidate sales. So again, I'll leave it up to the user, whether they want to keep these values, if they want to dial these up even more. It's totally up to them. But I will say that the more you reprice below the buy box, especially in the liquidation strategy, the better odds you'll have of winning and keeping the buy box. So I usually recommend increasing these as we go through the strategies. Everything else can stay the same. You likely still want to test those price points for suppressed listings, and then of course use your minimum price for all 3. I would save on this. Now we'll jump to maintenance. So in the last 2 strategies, we kept it exactly the same as this, where you only try to raise your price when you're in the buy box. I recommend changing this to lower and raise, because in this instance, if somebody were to come on the listing price below you while you're in the buy box, and you, again, and your point for the strategy to assign it to your listings is to liquidate, then you really want to just maintain the most amount of time you can possibly get in the buy box. And so to do that, I would recommend not only looking up at the competitors above you, but also looking down at the offers below you to see if you can also lower your price below them and keep the buy box through that entire time. So I would change this to lower and raise price. You can, again, the buffer amount, the 2 cents, it's really personal preference. I would say for a liquidation strategy, you may even want to consider raising this even more, because the bigger the buffer, the lower you'll go beneath them. And when you're looking to just win and own the buy box for as long as your inventory allows you to, it's probably your best bet to position yourself as competitively as you can. So I'll hit save on this, and then we'll go back to the min-max pricing. And again, as we get more and more aggressive, some users may make the case that they would rather just set their min-max pricing on their own, especially if they want to go sell at a loss in some cases. That's totally fine. I will say that in a true liquidation strategy, your best bet is to have a 0% ROI. Now, I know this sounds scary and it sounds unorthodox, and it's like, why would I ever do that? But the truth is that if you're trying to liquidate inventory, you don't necessarily care so much about your profit or your margin at that point. You're just trying to claw back and reclaim your capital that's deployed in the form of inventory. Because think about it, you have for the number of units that you have at Amazon of that SKU, multiply that by your cost. That is the total value of inventory that you have tied up at Amazon. And especially when you think of it this way, inventory that doesn't sell will cost you money. It'll cost you an opportunity cost. It'll cost you in literal long-term storage fees. Nothing is free on Amazon. They charge you, $40 a month just to exist.
Yep.
So if you're not moving your money and getting your money back and reclaiming it so you can churn it again and send it through the cycle, redeploy it into more profitable inventory, I would say as a best practice to, especially if you're trying to liquidate inventory, to set your minimum price as low as you can bear. Because remember, your point here is not to make a big profit off of liquidation. Your point is to get your money back so that you can then redeploy into more profitable and faster moving inventory that could, potentially offset any, either it was a bad buy or maybe the pricing dropped or the sales rank skyrocketed. Who knows? There's edge cases like these every single day on Amazon. And the faster you can reclaim your capital that you deployed, and you can have that liquidity on hand when an opportunity comes along to jump on a new ASIN that may, outperform the other one in terms of velocity and margin, you want to have that liquidity on hand to be able to go do that. And so, and the final point that I'll probably make here is that nobody gets rich off of Amazon by selling through their inventory one time. Amazon is a volume and compounding game. The more time you can reclaim your money and redeploy into inventory that sells faster with a bigger margin, the more times you can do that in a given period of time, the better off you'll be. That's how you gain real momentum on Amazon. And if that means selling at, break even or even a loss just to reclaim your capital to get liquidity back, to then redeploy it, that's how ultimately you'll find the better buys, the better ASINs, and you'll keep up the momentum versus having it tied up at Amazon, being charged storage fees, and then not having that liquidity on hand if an opportunity comes along to invest in it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is excellent.
So here you have it, your three strategies here in Aura, strategy 1, 2, 3. Again, with oscillation, test it. Not every listing is going to respond, as well as you could hope on every single ASIN all the time. There's going to be edge cases. There's going to be sellers who won't move their price up, and there's going to be sellers who just won't sell out. So test it. As your inventory ages and you want to, sell through it to reclaim your capital, start moving them through different strategies to increase your odds of winning the buy box and selling through them, reclaiming your capital. The other thing I'll add is that you can really create as many strategies as you'd like here. You can keep duplicating them. If you have different, ROI preferences or different min or max price preferences, you can keep duplicating strategies and have different buckets of whatever values you really prefer. We're always here to help too. Like I said, as a customer success manager here at Aura, I'm always happy to jump on a call with anybody. My email is fin@goaura.com. And if anybody has any questions or wants, a Zoom walkthrough of Aura for their accounts, feel free to just send me an email and we can get a time on the books, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop that email address up here at the bottom. And
Please do.
Finn, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. That was incredible. And I think I maybe even picked up a few things there to use Aura a little bit better as a user myself. Now, I will also say for those of you who are listening, if you want to get a trial of Aura to test it out in your own Amazon account, there's going to be a link below. It's goaura.com/CTS, and you use code CTS to get a trial as well as a discount. And then Dylan, who's one of the co-founders of Aura, and myself actually sat down for several hours over a few days and put together something called the Repricer Challenge to help you understand not how to use just Aura, but how to actually use repricing so that it's a net positive in your business. Rather than losing you money or anything like that. So there will be a link to the Repricer Challenge down below that you can take absolutely free. It costs $0. And for those of you who might want to use Aura, there is a little something special in there that I can't just come out and say. So make sure to go check that out. And Finn, thanks so much, man. This was incredibly helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I appreciate your knowledge and being so... you're on it with the customer. So I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for the time. And it's actually not just me doing customer success now. My colleague, Abby, she's a total champ. She's in the support inbox day to day. I'll jump in usually a couple days a week to come in and, help out and, answer any, more challenging questions and schedule calls and be able to jump in and help consult. But yeah, like I said, I'm more than happy to jump on a call with anybody. That's part of our offerings here with customer success, is that we try to, we want to help educate you to just be a better, not only Aura user, but Amazon seller. And we want to grow with you too. Now, we're a small team. There's 6 of us. And, the more people we can help grow their businesses, the better off we all are.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks again, Finn. And for everybody else out there, thank you so much for listening in. Hope this was helpful, and see you guys in the next video.